How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 1 of What If Deku had Ultra Instinct. And now, before I start this What If off, I would like to thank True Beta, link in the description to their channel, for making the thumbnails for this series. Also, put your What If suggestions down in the comment section below. And now, let's begin. Izuku was born with all white hair and silver eyes, and when he was born he wasn't crying at all, looking completely relaxed and calm, which was quite strange as most of the doctors there had only seen babies being born crying and screaming. So the main doctor there would end up asking Inko if they could run some tests, as they would do this and would find out nothing was wrong with Izuku. So they just assumed that this was probably a product of his quirk, as they thought the white hair, silver eyes, and him being calm maybe was just a quirk that he had. And so Izuku would grow up a completely normal life, besides the fact that his father was strangely absent, as Inka would tell Izuku, who would always wonder where his father was, that his father was overseas on a business trip and would not return until very, very later on. So Izuku would just learn to accept this, and when he was 4 years old, he would end up going to the quirk doctor office. And when he was there, the quirk doctor would say that they can't find any quirks, but there is just a resemblance of a quirk within him. So perhaps he has yet to awaken it, as it appears he does have a quirk with his white hair and silver eyes. And so we're just going to assume you have a quirk and we just can't detect it. Maybe because it's a new quirk and we don't have it in our system yet. So if you mind, could we possibly take some tests? As Inko would nod her head, just saying, "Oh, go ahead. I want my baby here to know what his quirk is, so he can tell it to all his friends." The doctor would nod his head before bringing Izuku into a room, where they would run some tests, as the doctor would ask, "Do you feel hot at all? Can you breathe fire or emit fire from your hands or feet?" Izuku would try this but would say no. And after many, many tests, the doctor would then just decide to throw a tiny eraser at Izuku, seeing what would happen. Izuku would dodge the eraser most just instantly, as the doctor would look on in shock, as he would then grab another eraser before throwing it right at Izuku, but this time faster. And Izuku would again dodge this even faster and easier. The doctor would then throw a third and final eraser, which Izuku would catch and flick it right back at the doctor, hitting him square in the forehead, as the doctor would nod his head, saying that Izuku has some sort of ultra reflex quirk. Izuku would nod his head and would then walk back to his mother, as she would then be waiting for what the news could be. The doctor would say how Izuku has some sort of ultra reflex quirk and that he can surely become a very, very powerful hero if he were to train. Inko would nod her head, saying, "Okay, thank you for the advice," before taking Izuku hurriedly and putting him into a car, as they would then drive off. As Izuku would then be sitting back at their house, as someone would then appear. This person had a halo over their head, as they had been granted a wish, as this person would end up being Master Roshi, who would end up teaching Izuku ki from a very young age, as they wouldn't even tell Izuku what his power was. Inko knew exactly what his power was, seeing it from someone that she had known a little while back. So Izuku would end up being taught ki by Master Roshi, as he would end up learning the the Kamehameha wave, and would end up just learning all of these different techniques and all of these things from Master Roshi. And Izuku could even beat Master Roshi after learning some very basic ki control. The only reason he couldn't beat him before was because all he could do was dodge. He didn't know how to attack at all. So, with some just tuning with his skills, Izuku was very easily able to dodge everything that came at him and was easily able to use ki. However, this isn't like the mastered Ultra Instinct that Goku has against his fight with Jiren. It is nowhere close to that, as this is a very, very baby form of that Ultra Instinct. Because Izuku has been in it his entire life, he really hasn't had any fights where he could fully master it. As sure, he's been in it, but he's not in the full potential of it, which I'm kind of bending some of the boundaries of Ultra Instinct. So, say once he unlocks Mastered Ultra Instinct, then that means he's going to be in the Mastered Ultra Instinct for the rest of his life, as he's in a smaller form of it because he is so young, meaning he doesn't have the power or energy capable of sustaining Master Ultra Instinct for his entire lifespan, so it's forced to use a smaller version, meaning a very few select attacks can still hit him. However, Master Roshi is not far powerful enough to do this. Say, but if Goku were to throw a punch in, say, Super Saiyan or Super Saiyan Blue, this would easily be able to hit Izuku, because this Ultra Instinct just isn't the just form or capability that it has. It has the potential, but it's just not there yet. So Izuku would end up training, as he would end up being sitting in school, as he was still forced to go to school, even though he wished to train instead of going there, seeing as power was a lot better than knowledge in his opinion, but that's clearly not a good opinion, as knowledge equals power basically. So if Izuku were to use good strategies, he could easily wipe out his opponents instead of just utilizing his strength and just beating them on pure brute force. So Izuku would end up being sitting in class just learning about different types of things, math, reading, and all of that, and his kids really didn't like Izuku. Izuku didn't talk much, as he really felt no need to. He didn't talk to any kids because he was just focused on training, and so kids would end up starting to bully him because he was different. He was an outcast. He had white hair, silver eyes, looked nothing compared to other kids. Sure, there were kids with like stretchy fingers and wings, but no one really cared about them because they talked and they were friends with everyone because they were Bakugo's friends. And so Bakugo would end up just trying to bully Izuku, however, it would never turn in his favor. As, say, if he was throwing a spitball at Izuku, Izuku would easily dodge this, and flicking it much like he flicked the eraser back at the doctor, would flick it back at Bakugo, where it would slam right in between his eyes, just making Bakugo even angrier. However, he really couldn't do anything about it, because every time he tried to punch or hit Izuku, Izuku would just dodge it before grabbing his fist and looking dead into Bakugo's eyes as if telling him to back off, and Bakugo would, but he would never give up, basically making it his life's goal to end up hitting Izuku. So Izuku would end up just walking into school one day to find out that it was the last day of school. He really didn't care about schedules at all, as he was focused on training. Remember, all he wanted to do was become the #1 hero and save as many people as possible. This was his life's work. He's going to save as many people as possible and become the #1 hero. As Izuku looked up to Master Roshi, who had told stories about how he went on adventures and trained people that also went on adventures and saved millions of people through their battles. And Izuku would end up just learning from this and would also want to go out and save as many people as possible. So Izuku would end up walking into school, finding out it's the last day of school, as they would all be handed out papers and would be asked where they want to go for high school, as Izuku would end up putting down UA High School, knowing that that is the best hero high school in the entire nation. And so if he were to go there, he would possibly become one of the highest just entry-level heroes out there. So Izuku would end up putting this down, as the teacher would then collect all the papers once everyone had said they had finished. The teacher would end up reading them, as he would then say, "Oh, it appears we have 2 of our classmates here going to UA High School. Why don't you give a round of applause to Izuku Midoriya and Bakugo Katsuki?" As the entire just crowd or class would end up clapping their hands just in pure amazement. They had seen Bakugo's I don't know how to pronounce the word. Just they've seen Bakugo's power. With his quirk and just flashiness, he was sure to become a hero. But Izuku, that is someone they weren't sure about. Will he become a hero? He has the strength. He has the power. They have seen him easily just defeat Bakugo by dodging all of his attacks and just looking at him, causing Bakugo to back off. So perhaps Izuku could also become a hero. Plus, no one really had the guts to just laugh at Izuku. They were all pretty much scared of him because they were scared of Bakugo because of how angry and flashy he was. And then for someone to beat Bakugo, that made them even scareder of Izuku, and that's also another reason why Izuku really never made any friends. He just completely didn't have anyone come up to him. Say if Izuku came up to someone and talked to them, they would just not say anything and would rather move away. Say if he was trying to just sit down with someone at lunch and talk to them, they would move away rather than talking with Izuku. So Izuku didn't have as much experiences as just gaining friends, as really the only friends he had were his mother and Master Roshi, as they were training Izuku. So Izuku would end up just spending out time wondering when the not internships, but the UA entrance exams were to start. And so 10 months would end up passing from the last day of school, and this would end up being the UA entrance exams. For 10 months prior, the day after he got out of school, Master Roshi would end up coming to him and would tell him that he needs to train as hard as he possibly can, as it is now time that the UA entrance exams are coming up. And if he doesn't train as hard as he possibly can, then he's not going to make it. Sure, Izuku probably would have made it when he was 4, but this is just sort of a scare factor to try to get Izuku to train even harder. However, this really didn't scare Izuku at all. So Izuku would end up training as hard as he could, as he would end up walking into the UA entrance exams and onto the UA campus. And when he would arrive, he would end up getting just weird looks by everyone there. Everyone was extremely nervous and jittery. However, you could then see some kid just calmly walk in, just not caring or looking around at anything around him, and was just looking down at a map to where he should go. And this kind of weirded kids out, and many kids just thought, oh, that kid's for sure gonna make it. Look how calm he is. He's definitely confident about this. So Izuku would end up walking into the auditorium and would end up sitting down and waiting for just all of the instructions to end up being said, as they would end up passing out the written test, which Izuku would pass with flying colors. He was forced to do so much homework and tutoring, as Inko wanted him to be the best he possibly could, as she also had the money and resources being left to it by Izuku's father. So Inko would end up just getting Izuku many tutors, wanting Izuku to be a very, very smart person. And so Izuku was, passing the test with 0 just marks against his score, getting a 100% on the test. So Izuku would end up sitting there waiting for the hero test to begin, as President Mike would then walk back onto the stage, telling them how there's going to be 3 robots, a 1-pointer, 2-pointer, and 3-pointer, and there's also a massive 4 robot, which is a 0-pointer. So if you rather just get points, I'd suggest avoiding it, as it's best to avoid it unless you want to get a minus 50 score, because if this robot is to grab you and disarm you, that's minus points to you. So I suggest you just try to avoid it at all costs. So the crowd would nod, as they would then walk off to where the hero test was just said to begin, as people that were, say, taking the support course would end up still sitting there, while others that were just trying to get into the general classes would end up leaving, as the support course class would end up beginning, as kids would end up just trying to throw in their gadgets that they were doing, as the support course teacher would end up coming in and just looking at all of their gadgets, which may come important later. So Izuku would end up walking out into this tunnel, as he was assigned to City A. So Izuku would end up walking into this tunnel, as kids would still be staring at him, as Izuku would start to stretch his hands and his arms and legs, as Izuku was completely ready for whatever was coming. He was also wearing the orange gi that Goku and Krillin would wear, so kids were also just staring at him, as he was just completely different from everyone else, as no one was really wearing that. They were all wearing like jogging pants or whatever, or shorts and a t-shirt, so Izuku really just looked like the odd man out. So Izuku, still stretching, would see the doors open, as he would then rush in, as some kids would start to laugh. For all the talk about that kid, he sure seems to have failed already, and jump starting, as over these speakers would then say, "What are you kids doing? Follow that white-haired kid. Heroes don't wait for someone to tell them to go save people," as the entire crowd would just look up in shock at the speakers before many of them would then start to rush in, while some would be left behind, just still frozen in shock. So Izuku had already left a path of just destroyed robots, as Izuku would just go in with his fists, as robots would end up throwing punches, but Izuku would dodge them, throwing a punch right at the robot's stomach, as the robot would then just basically just be destroyed, as many people would end up being watching Izuku up in the teacher's lounge, as Nezu was just in complete awe by Izuku's raw strength. These robots were made of the hardest possible material that they could find, basically meant so that no one can just go out and just punch them. You actually have to use strategy to defeat them. So Izuku, who was just easily punching them with his fist and not showing any signs of damage or being hurt, it just completely shocked Nezu. So Izuku would continue on his parade of destroying all of these robots, as he would end up looking around and would end up hearing someone cry for help. This person would end up being a brown-haired lady who was being held by the Zero Pointer, who had gotten 50 minus points because she had gotten just disarmed by it. So Izuku would end up jumping up, flying towards this Zero Pointer before creating a ki blast, as he would then make it larger in one of his hands before reaching back his hands and pitching it right at the Zero Pointer, much like a pitcher in baseball. So this small, tiny ki blast, which had gotten bigger in Izuku's palm of his hand, would then start to enlarge rapidly, as it would then close in on the Zero Pointer before colliding with it, as the entire main frame and body of the Zero Pointer would end up just being disintegrated by Izuku's ki blast. So, as the arms were falling, Izuku would jump over and would grab the falling Uraraka before landing on a building, as she would end up smiling, thanking him, before starting to breathe heavily, as the entire thing had just completely shocked her, and it felt like she was having a heart attack. She was completely scared, as she was massively above the ground, at least 10 stories, because of how tall this Zero Pointer was. So Izuku would hear that the test had finished, as he would ask her if she wanted a ride down to the ground, as she would of course accept this. Izuku would end up grabbing a hold of her before dropping her down on the ground as they landed. Izuku would then bid farewell to her, and would then end up walking off out of the arena and out of the campus, as he would end up making it back to his home, where Master Roshi would end up asking Izuku how he thought he did, as Izuku would say he thinks he did well, as he would then say, well, then I'm gonna have to say goodbye to you, Izuku. It's possibly the last time I'll see you here in this world. I fulfilled my wish that I wanted, so now I'm gonna be gone. I might not see you for quite a while now, as Izuku would look strangely at Master Roshi, who would then start to disappear, as Inka would then come out of the kitchen as they were standing in the family room, and would then tell Izuku what Master Roshi was, as the halo above his head wasn't a quirk at all, rather it was a sign that he was an angel, because he had died. He had been granted a wish that he could stay with you and train you up until you gotten into UA. And now that you say you think you got into, he just accepted that you got into it, and that his wish had been fulfilled, and so he's no longer with us. I mean, he's still alive in the other world, but not here. Izuku would nod his head, having to sit down to completely think about how his sensei had just completely vanished and was no trace left of him. Meanwhile, at the UA campus, the teachers were just completely insane about what Izuku had just done. He had completely obliterated the Zero Pointer in one attack. Not even All Might could have done that back when he was at UA, as he faced a Zero Pointer, but he couldn't even take the thing down. He was just stalling time so that the test could finish before then. So they saw the massive amounts of potential within Izuku. Mostly Aizawa though, so he would immediately tell Nezu how he wants Izuku in his class, and that he has a plan for the entire class, as Nezu would end up nodding his head before going back down to think about what the plans for the UA school year should be. So, should we still take them to the USJ? Well, yes, of course we should. Why wouldn't we? Midnight would end up answering. I don't know. I just have a strange feeling something bad is gonna happen. Well, oh well. I guess it's just a feeling after all. It's nothing that's going to actually happen. So Izuku would end up receiving a letter saying that he had made it into UA High School, as he would end up smiling down at it, which was one of the first times Izuku had even smiled, as he would then be happy, knowing that his journey to becoming the number one hero had now begun. And that's where I'm gonna leave this what if off, everyone. Remember, the thumbnails for the series are by True Beta, a link in the description to their channel, as I would like to thank them for making the thumbnails for this series. Also, please put your what if suggestions down in the comments section below. I hope you all do enjoy this series, and I hope you all did enjoy this part so far, and please put your suggestions for what maybe I should do or correct in the series down in the comments section below as well. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.